Hello and welcome to Military Mantra. In this interview, we have today Lieutenant General Vinod Bhatia, PVSM, AVSM, SM, ex-DGMO, served in Indian Army for close to 40 years, and he was also the Colonel of the Parachute Regiment. And in this interview, we'll try to understand his journey of joining Indian Army, life in Indian Army in the Parachute Regiment, and various life lessons that he has learned over his service. So thank you, sir, for coming on this interview. It's an honor and welcome.
Thank you, Akash. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you, Military Mantra. It's an honor for me.
So if you could, start telling us, about your journey before joining Forge and what motivated you back then to join the Indian Army.
You may not believe it, but it goes back a very long way. I was in class 3, possibly, or class 4, maybe. I think class 3, I recollect. And my father posted Kathmandu, and we were staying next to the military mission there. And as a child, I was on the road, and there's this black car with a flag which passed by, and children are very fascinated by the military and the army. All children are, and I was no different. So I just tried to salute in a very shabby manner, which as a child you don't know how to salute, but I did try to salute. And the occupant of the car must be a very senior officer. I don't know who he was. The way he saluted back was a proper salute, but he did not take it as a very serious, and it was a proper salute, and he acknowledged me as a good boy and a human being, and that's what touched me. And I came back home and told my parents, "Look, Dad, I'm going to join the army." He said, "Come on, too small to decide anything." But I think my journey started from there, and I never had a second thought. I never wavered from that aim of joining the army. That one incident. And of course, it was reinforced by other incidents later on in life. But I think that was one incident which shaped my thought process and joining the army. His demeanor, his military bearing, the way he was, traveling that car, sitting in the car, the car itself with the red light, all those things. Of course, one didn't know that, aiming high was not the right thing to do because you get disappointed. But I did not know the significance of a car also. Honestly, I did not know the significance of a flag or a red flag, but it looked good. I said, this is what a man should be like. And that is where I think I decided to join the army. And I joined the Sainik School in 8th class. Sainik School Ghodakal, one of the best, it is still one of the top schools. And we contributed immensely to the armed forces leadership. And we won the RF trophy about 8 times. So I joined the Sainik School, and there I was not a very, I was not a strong boy. I was not good in studies, but I was not bad in studies either. And I was average in studies, and but not too good. I was good in sports and games. I used to like that. And one day my principal, God bless his soul, Wing Commander Mukherjee, fantastic officer and a human being. And he says, Vinod Bhatia, I don't think you can pass your 10th class. We joined India after 10th class those days. It was, and 10th was a school exam. It was not a board exam. So he said, Vinod Bhatia, I don't think you're studying enough and you will pass you can't pass your 10th class. I said, so I know that. And I could see a little, setback. If you know that, what are you doing about it? I said, sir, I'll pass my ND and you pass my 10th. So he said, okay, done. And that's how it happened. I passed my National Defence Academy exam when I was in 10th, and he passed my 10th. So it was a fair one, and I joined the National Defence Academy, and there's no looking back thereafter. Once you join the NDA, you're in the rut, and a straight line. You can only move forward from there. 3 years training, 1 year in IMA, and onto the Parachute Regiment, and 40 years service. Retired about nearly 7.5 years ago. Life is good.
Got it.
It doesn't get better.
One step back, if you could tell us about your experience in the service selection board back then. How did you prepare, and what tips you would like to give to the aspirants who wish to join the forces and go through SSB?
See, one thing which is SSB is everyone is apprehensive about passing SSB. There's no mantra of passing SSB. It cannot be there. Like UPSC, you can study and the subjects, the syllabus. So it's all about studying and hard work. But SSB a little more than that. SSB is the toughest interview or the selection process, I will say, anywhere in the country for anything whatsoever. It's over a period of 4 to 5 days, and they really see you through, whether it's the ground, the GTO test, the interview, the psychological tests, and they observe you. They observe everything about you. It's a very fair system. And one thing I would like to tell you as parents are that you can't fool, you can't be a fraud, you can't be fake, you can't say that I will give the right answers and get on with it. There are no right answers. They're not. It's not a what you call MCQ and you get the right answer and you're okay. No, it's not that. It is being honest to yourself. It is being honest to everything. Honest to your purpose, honest to your intent, honest to your action. You got to have it in you in the sense that and you got to be passionate about it. And once you go there, don't be apprehensive. Be your normal self. We're not looking for Field Marshal Manekshaw in every aspirant. No, we're not. The army is looking for average, well-meaning, well-to-do, uh, aspirants, and they have to have trainability and they have to have the right values and the beliefs. So you have to have the right values and beliefs. You have a interview which will take up someone very experienced, someone about 29, 30 years of service. And in the interview, you have to know your subjects, whatever is asked. And if you don't know a thing, be frank. You said, "Sir, I'm not too aware of it." There's nothing wrong with not knowing. After all, at the SSB for NDA or for IMA, you're not supposed to know everything. If you don't know a subject, you say, "Sir, I'm not too good at this subject." And try to weigh the conversation to your strengths, but don't hide your weaknesses. Everyone has got weaknesses. Be frank about things. Be forthright when you go for your GTO test. Don't argue with people for the sake of arguing. Don't be one up on anyone. You're not in competition with anyone. Sorry. If you think only 3 or 4 will get selected out of a batch of 50, well, just too bad. You can be 3, or you can be 4, or you can be 5. It doesn't really matter, but it is not at someone else's cost. You can't say that if I come in the first, I will get selected. No, you may not get selected. So don't be one up man. Try to be courteous to everyone. Be helpful to everyone. It doesn't take anything to just be a normal self. Normal values. Our values, our Indian values are the best values, and there's nothing hostile-like qualities in a SSB. What we're looking at is a social factor, whether you can be trainable, whether you can pull along in a group, be a team member when you go to GTO, lead and take the toughest task and try to perform it. If you don't perform it, so what? But don't overreach. Don't try to let the others down that I have done it and you can't do it. Don't show that off. So these are very small things. Your psychological tests. Some of us go for that coaching classes. Go for coaching classes. Good to know what happens. But if you think that you can learn it and then give the right answers, no, it is they have a lot of experience and they're seeing things. But pay attention to small details. Go with a proper haircut. It doesn't cost anything. You need to shave. That's sort of the army is all about being correct. Wear the right dresses. Don't be flashy. Don't go in t-shirts and things like that. Wear a shirt. Wear a proper shirt. Maybe a light colored shirt, a dark color. Wear your normal black shoes and black socks and things like that. You can't be flashy about it. It is not that I'm not saying wear a tie or something. No, don't do that. But once you enter, you should look pleasant. You should look, it should give a good feel. Yes, you're serious about things. Some of us are not serious about things. Some of us take it very incorrect way and try to be brash, try to show off. So avoid the wrong and reinforce the right. But understand that you have to play on your strengths and don't try to hide your weaknesses. Every human being has got weaknesses. So there's nothing so great about if you got some weakness, whether it's a physical weakness in doing an obstacle, or not knowing a subject, or getting an extempore and not being too great about it. Fine, that's okay. But you should have trainability. You should have honesty of purpose, honesty of intent. So this is some of the advice I can give you. It is not difficult to crack it. It is not easy to crack it, but it's not difficult either. Whether you go with an open mind, don't put yourself under tension. Understand that I have known people who some of the coursemen who cracked the 5th time.
Okay.
So I asked them how did I was the lucky one to crack it the first time. So I asked him how did you crack it the 5th time. He said I got so fed up of giving SSB. I said, yeah, let me just go and do it this time. So there are people who done it the 5th time. So it's not that the first time you fail, that means you don't have OLQs, you don't have the right qualities, the social factor is not correct, so you'll not get selected. No, it's not that. It's just that they were trying either too hard or they were trying to be too smart. and it ended up being too smart is not very good. When I say smartness, I'm not meaning don't be smart. You have to be smart, but don't try to be smart in the way the colloquial fashion when you say he's being very smart and all. No, don't do that. So these are very small things, but they mean a lot. They mean a lot. You are being observed 24 hours a day. If you think that you're not being observed, sorry, you're being observed. You can't be, even in your barracks where you're staying, where you're eating, uh, make sure the 4 days, those 96 hours, you are thoroughly under observation. Don't waste time on the mobile though that time. Most of us, we can't stay without a mobile. Check your mobile. I'm not saying that don't check it, but don't waste too much time on mobile and trying to answer every WhatsApp post which you have got and try to comment on things. So my aim is be honest with yourself, be honest with the system, and trust in the system. And if you think someone and he'll help you out, no one can help you out. Sorry, no one can help you out. You have to help yourself.
Mm. Yeah. So if you could, tell us, you went to National Defense Academy, post that, and then IMA. How was life back then in India and IMA? And any memorable instance you would like to share with the audience?
Life was hell. Okay. At the age of 16, I was a little less than 16. When you land up in India, you don't know which side, when is day and when is night. Uh, it's a living hell. Honestly, it's a living hell. There's no easy cakewalks out there. I think it is the worst period. The first, second, third, fourth terms. First, second, third terms. First term is the worst, of course. It gets better then, there's no sleep. There's no food to eat. There's no food to eat, but there's no right time to eat. There are a lot of activities. Life is it's not good. It's very very tough. And nowadays, I believe in our time, we never heard of anyone running away from India or being withdrawn from India for not wanting to stay on because it's so difficult to get in that once you got in, you had no other thought. But nowadays, I believe there are some people who go and join and then want to opt out. Well, there's nothing wrong with opting out. There are enough avenues open, and if you find that you're not up to it, so opt out, fine. But don't think that you just go to India and that's the last of it, and it's only the beginning. It's not the end. So there's a lot of hard work to do, and be prepared for the worst. And but it is worth it. Once you're out of the NDA, and today I met three of my course mates at a round of golf, and those 3 years were the most memorable years of your life. So something you'll remember by, and as they say, you go in as a boy, you come out as a man. They really make you something what we now call Atmanirbhar. So you are self-reliant. You can survive on anything and everything you can survive on. If there's nothing you can still survive on, that you're a survivor and you're a leader. You can get out of any situation. You can really do the impossible. So that's what the training industry.
Got it. So if you could, also tell us your journey of joining the parachute regiment and what motivated you back then to decide, you want to join the paras. So how did that happen?
Again, I think I take decisions very fast in life. I remember I was the second time in India, and in the India you have a swimming test. And I come from a Sainik school in Nainital, never had a swimming pool. I did not know swimming. And it's not only a swimming test. At the end of the swimming test, once you pass the swimming test, you have to go on the 7-meter board, and you have to jump from the 7-meter board, which is scary. And I had always been scared of heights. Even in the mountains, in the vehicles used to go, I was very scared of heights. I still am scared of heights. It's not that I'm not scared of heights. I'm still scared of heights. So, the first time the swimming test was heard as a non-swimmer, I just went in and I swam and I passed my swimming test, and I had now to go to 7-meter board. I'd never been up to a 7-meter board in the swimming pool. Okay. I was so scared. So that day I just climbed up, and I don't know what came to me. I just jumped out, and then I jumped, and everyone was surprised that how was this frail chap. I was all of about 45, 46 kgs. That's all. And 5 feet 2 inches in height, and I'm a hefty man now. And I came back and they said, "Oh, well done. Yeah, I'm going to join the parachute regiment." I was reading a book those days called, The Longest Day, and that's all about paratroopers, The Longest Day. And it really impressed me. I said, if something has to be, if you want to join the army, join the best, and the elitist or the elite. So I decided to join the parachute regiment. and I never looked back. And I from second time NDA, passed out of NDA, I went into IMA. You keep changing your mind of the arm you want to join, the regiment you want to join. I never had a second thought about it, and I joined. The only thing I did not know at that time was that after you join the regiment, after you volunteer for the Indian Army is the largest voluntary army in the world, largest
Correct.
voluntary army, right? And among the largest voluntary army in the world, the only voluntary force in the army is the parachute regiment. You
Yes.
have to volunteer for it. And once you volunteer, you join the regiment and then you are probated. And the probation is bad. Probation is, NDA is a cakewalk in front of the probation. Right? The selection, so yeah, honest, selection rate is about 20%. It is physically tough, mentally tough, emotionally tough, medically tough. Injuries are one too many. And again, it's not so. So I decided to join the parachute regiment. That's all, and I was fortunate to join it, and I was equally fortunate to be selected, and accepted.
Got it, sir. So we have heard a lot about what happens in probation in various interviews and even in Discovery Channel videos. How was your probation back then? Any memories from there which you would like to share during your probation in the battalion which you were in?
It's not a good thing to talk about yourself. But then this is probation is one thing which is these are unbelievable things you do. Again, it's lack of sleep. You get disoriented, and you get back to orientation. You have to survive that, and every day is a survival. And the day you want to give up, you just say, I'm not a volunteer, and you give up. So they make sure that you want to give up. You realize that they put you through so much of stress, physical, mental, emotional, sleepless, that you want to give up, right? And if you give up, you give up. And if you don't give up, then only you got chances like you got to complete the probation period. And you're not an officer when you're a probationer. Okay. A
Correct.
probationer. You have no right whatsoever. It is the lowest form you are in. You have to go through the toughest of things. And we were 14 of our course mates who joined the parachute regiment from IMA. Five of us were selected. So which is not bad. 5 out of 14 is about 30%. Normal selection is 20%. And out of the five selected, three of us went on to become generals, which is not bad. So probation is very tough, very very tough. You have to just survive every day and make sure you're medically fit also, and keep at it. Once you decide on a thing to do it, then go ahead and do it. You can't back out of it. Like parachute regiment, we're a bunch of misfits who fit well together. It is more, honestly, we're a bunch of misfits in society, but we fit well together. You have to have a kink in you to join. You have to be mad to join. Why should you go through such a torture? Tell me. There has to be reason to it. So you want to, well, it's very good. Out of the 400 odd course of mine who passed out, everyone knows why to join the paras. Others may forget about who joined what. But paras no one forget. And when you meet someone outside, he says, okay, you're army, yes. Okay, what arm? He says infantry. He says, which regiment? He says, the paras. So you feel good about it. Why not? People look up to you. You feel very good about it. Everyone says paras. So that's what it is. You want to be the best. Go and be the best.
Yeah. Sir, since you were a paratrooper, if you could also tell us, your first experience as a paratrooper when you jumped off an aircraft, how was that?
Oh, that was easy. That's nothing. They're very easy. Honestly, yeah, the jumping part is the easiest part. Especially the first few jumps are very easy because they trained you well, and you're very confident. You're young. You're physically exceedingly fit, and so you get onto the door and you look down. You feel scared. You are afraid of the heights. There's no doubt about it. But when the parachute opens, you feel on top of the world. Every man and emperor. You feel very good, and it's only later part in life when you do more and more jumps, combat jumps or tactical drops with loads, that you realize that things can go very wrong. It's not the first jumps that you are scared of. It is as they say in the parachute regiment, the last centimeter that counts. It is the landings. The injuries mostly are during landing, right? And when you do more and more jumps, then you realize the chances, the gravity of things going wrong is much more. So the first jumps are easy actually because you go through a basic course, you train for what a couple of weeks plus, and you have all the josh and you have all the mental toughness is there, which is there, which continues. But those are basic jumps. So it's very interesting. What was the parachute opens? That feeling, that feeling is just too good. And once you land, that day is well, you feel that you're on top of the world. That's something which no one can describe. That happiness, that joy, that sense of achievement, accomplishment, comradeship. Your friends, your affiliation with your friends. Uh, Something good.
Nice. So if you could also tell us, when you joined the parachute regiment as a young officer, how was your, first combat experience, and, what went into your mind back then when you went into the combat?
See, I was commissioned in 1974. During 71, war I was in India, so I missed the war actually. And when I joined the unit, everyone said, "Oh, you've not seen the war, so you useless." Which is okay. Well, I've not seen the war. Not seen the war. It's like when we are born and we grow up. You didn't fight for the independence of India, so you're useless. Well, we were born in a generation when in a free India, so why? How can I be useless? Similar with the 71 war. So I saw things were not so the security is not so bad. And my first combat experience was in Manipur in the northeast, and thereafter it started from there, but it never ended thereafter. So I was fortunate to be part of almost all operations post 71, whether it's Manipur, Nagaland, the northeast insurgencies, J&K insurgencies. Kargil also I was there a little later, though not exactly in the operation part, but I was there in the area as I was there during the war. And I was there for Maldives, visited Pavan, so Bhutan Ops. So the things have been there, and combat is, when you lead men, you lead men. You're not bothered anything else. Your men trust you, and you trust your men. And the only thing is the responsibility of two responsibilities. One is mission accomplishment, and the second is safety of your men. Right? Both are very important. So that responsibility as the leader is what motivates you to, because mission comes first. Your mission has to accomplish that whatever this thing, and you don't want to pay cost for it. It's very to have your own man injured, or when bullets fly, uh, they hit someone, and it is awful when one of your own colleagues gets hit. All your energy is to evacuate him, to make sure the minimum loss happens. So that is what combat experience. It is not. It is not. When you're in contact, you don't think of anything. Honestly, you're just thinking of your mission and you're getting on with it. And when you're out of contact, then you look at it. You fall back. You say what right you did, what wrong you did, how can you do it better. So those things do happen. So that is a combat experience. But combat experience is at a young age is excellent. At the older age, the responsibilities were too.
That's good. So you were also part of one of the missions, Operation of Cactus, which happened in Maldives, which you were part of. If you could briefly describe, what did you experience and picture it for us?
Yeah. Maldives is an operation, I think, which has been underrated in recognition. It's not been recognized. It is one of the, I would say, one of the best operations ever carried out. In the sense that we accomplished our mission from a cold start within 16 hours of the first indication of an impending operation, about nearly 3,000 kilometers from base, and without a casualty, without a single casualty. And the chances of casualty, and we had no inputs. Honestly, when I was the brigade major, and the commander was not there, and I was sitting in the office. It was around 10ish in the morning, busy with some routine work. And when I got the call for move, first it was from General Malik, was that kind of brigadier, and then from the vice chief. The vice chiefs don't talk to majors. So I thought must be a staff officer asking for something. So he said, is the vice chief speaking? I said, yeah, what do you want? He says, the vice chief speaking. I said, yeah, understood. What do you want? He says, this is the vice chief of the Army Staff General Roderick speaking. When he said that, then I actually stood up. The vice chiefs don't talk to majors in the sense they don't call up. It's not so easy. There's a chain of command. And then he gave the orders for Maldives, and we had a great commander, great leader, Brigadier Balsara. Then Colonel Joshi, that time was CO, Brigadier Joshi was CO 6 para, my own unit, and a great leader. And then RGS Dhillon was there, who rescued the president. So we were a great team, actually. We were very well trained, exceedingly well trained. And so we moved 6 para, and then the commander came and said, "What have you done?" I said, "Moved 6 para." He says, "Good. So you moved your own unit. You trust your own unit more than anyone else." But to cut a long story short, I think the credit must go to a few people on this. Among the military, Brigadier Balsara, Brigadier Joshi, Colonel Dhillon, Brigadier Dhillon, that Major Dhillon, and the troops who executed it. It's not easy. And the decision taken by Brigadier Balsara was the main thing. I do remember we had the code word with us, and we were flying in. All the briefing was happening. The first two aircraft, I was in the lead aircraft with the Brigadier Balsara 6 para team. There are two companies 6 para in that. With the CO. When we were about to leave, the code word was with me, and the Air Force, Rukan Behur was flying us. Excellent. Just that the leaders come together. We had the best Air Force officer flying us. We had a great leader at the brigade level. We had a great leader at the battalion level, at the company level. So when the code word came, code word was a code word Hadia, and then the lights were to come on, come off. And the only thing was anchoring in mind was that, look, if the ATC gives the code word and the light signal under threat of a pistol, he will give it. So once you land the complete, aircraft with about we were about 173 in that aircraft, other than the air crew, we would have just go off. Or someone who just, even after that given, someone just drives a jeep onto the runway, and when you're landing and you hit the jeep, that is the last of us all. And we carrying 60 parachutes, but Maldives was too small a place to jump. So when I went to the commander, I said, "Sir, decision time," and he says, "We land." Okay. So that was the decision to take. And I told Rukan Behur we landed. Rukan Behur landed, and of course, it was a great risk he landed. So I think that decision to land, and thereafter, once we landed, we secured the airfield, and we surprised the mercenaries, who had staged the coup. Our job was to rescue the president of Maldives, Mr. Game, right? And we did not know where Mr. Game was. We did not know where Maldives was, honestly. We knew somewhere in the Indian Ocean. Oh, that is, there's no Google Mata. So, and if you look at an atlas, you don't see Maldives anywhere in atlas. It's so small. Right now, you see Maldives because Maldives is a known name. But that time, the only thing I know about Maldives was a part of SARC. Nothing else. And Maldives is not given on a map. It's just a small Daytona. You should take an atlas, and atlas was the atlas that time. So on the atlas, Maldives was just somewhere, southeast of Trivandrum, things like that. So we didn't know anything about anything. So when I landed out there, and then we had to take boats and cross over. We did not know who the president was, but the president was on the telephone, and he said, "Look, I'm being surrounded. You have to hurry up." So we hurried up. Fortunately, everything went right, and luck is a great factor. We were lucky also. We rescued him, and we have to bring him back. And once we rescued him, good politicians, all politicians are good politicians. He said, I'm not leaving my country. I'm not going back." So our orders were to rescue him and get him back. And my commander said, now that we have rescued him, his safety is of prime importance, because now something happens, then it will be very bad. Okay, we'll have nowhere to go. And that is the time when he spoke to the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister said, "Okay, give all your assistance to the President, and the President will stay there." And he stayed on, and next day we had the American battle group coming, and I got a call from with 3 hours sailing time away. So I said, "Well, we completed the mission. Just keep 3 hours sailing time away." Maldives is such a small place. But it was a good operation. We did it very, very well. The complete brigade was there, and we built up in no time. Completed the mission, and no casualties.
Nice. So you have been in
By the way, a few months later, the Time magazine came out with a cover story, 3rd April 1989, Superpower India. It started with the Maldives operation.
Okay,
1989, you're talking about. Rising superpower India. I still have a photo somewhere.
Nice. So you have been in part of multiple operations. So if I can ask you, what was your favorite weapon back then?
Favorite weapon? My men.
Yeah.
my men.
Okay. Yeah.
They would never let you down. There's no question. They would do anything, means anything in the world. If you ask them to attack Mount Everest, they will attack Mount Everest. You're a leader. And once you lead from the front, you lead from the front. There's mere piche move. There's no other leadership that matters. It's mere piche move. And not, mere piche move is not physical. It is everything. You have to be, the men. I say Jawan and Bhagwan एक जगह रखता हूं मैं.
Okay.
He's my Bhagwan, and he protects me. As far as physical weapons are concerned, of course, my favorite weapon is a sniper.
Okay.
And sniper is not very difficult. Sniping is it's not easy. Sniper is a very difficult job. The concentration required, the focus required, because you only get one shot, and you got to get the target right. You got to identify the target right, and you got to be patient enough to hit the target where it wants. And it's a very accurate weapon. So sniper, I suppose, is the best weapon. And if you can get a good sniper, can really change everything. He can really change the game. Because he can create so much of chaos. One shot and you get the leader of your adversary. He's gone. The next is gone, and there's total chaos. So you have disrupted the enemy in many ways. Otherwise, all of the weapons are there, not that. But sniper, I think, is favorite.
Got it, sir. So, if you can tell us any 3 life lessons that you have learned from the armed forces, which you still cherish. Anything.
Armed forces is a constant, it's learning, throughout learning. Even today, it's learning from the armed forces. When I meet men, I learn. So everything is new. Learning. So life lessons in the sense, okay, right. One of the things we learned was in every unit we have thing known as Wafadari, Imandari, Bahadri. Right? Wafadari, Imandari, Bahadri. Now, it is not in the literal sense. Wafadari is your loyalty to your, Naam Namak Nishan. To your unit, your regiment, your team, your loyalty to your men, your loyalty to your seniors. So, Wafadar is all. Imandari is on everything. It's not only money. You have to be honest in your purpose, activity, actions, intent. And Bahadri is moral courage. More moral courage than physical courage. Physical courage only one part. Physical courage, everyone's got physical courage. It's the moral courage that matters, which takes a lot of doing. That is one life lesson. The other life lesson I would say is the responsibility. You're responsible as a leader. You're responsible. A small thing. I got posted to take over a division along the line of control. I was a brigadier. I was very happy because that is the largest division of the Indian Army. Largest, literally largest. It is. So I was very happy. It's a dream division to command, to lead rather. And so I went home. My parents were there. I told my dad, I was approved to be a major, and I'm going to command the division, which is the largest division, and this and that, and it's got the most, the largest area and the largest number of troops and the most, critical areas in Jammu and Kashmir, things like that. So he kept listening, and then he asked me a simple question. He said, "No, that's fine, but are you responsible enough?" Okay. So what happens is your aspirations are one part of it, and when your aspirations come, you feel very good about it. Success is, very good, and why not? You worked for it. So, but the fact remains that are you responsible enough? Success comes your way; it should not go to your head. And that was one life lesson I learned outside the army. My father is civilian, but he had heard about the army, so that is one life lesson. A small one. I must tell you, this is a very interesting one. I was a second lieutenant. That time, second lieutenant, not lieutenant. Second lieutenant. I was a second lieutenant. I was doing cross country, and I was good at cross country. So when the final cross country was there, Havaldar Manduri, was an old timer cross country runner. He walked up and he said, "Saab, chappa shortcut mile na, to wo bhi le lena." Chappa, you understand, na? Small.
Every corner.
चप्पा शॉर्टकट ले लेना, लेकिन ध्यान रखना, कहते हैं चप्पा शॉर्टकट 14.5 किलोमीटर में ना 1 किलोमीटर हो जाता है, तो चप्पा बट जो जहां से यू गेट द टोकन, लेकिन जहां से चेक पॉइंट है ना, वो चेक पॉइंट में शॉर्टकट पर मारना, क्यों डिस्क्वालीफाई हो जाएगा. So that was a life lesson. I've always taken shortcuts in life, but not at the checkpoints. Okay. So and later on, when you grow up, you learn the small law, Pareto's law, 80-20 rule. The 20% of time you do 80% of the work, 80% of time you do 20% of the work. But that was much later. But all my life I've taken shortcuts, small shortcuts. And that has saved me time, energy, resource, and I've reached my target faster.
Got it. Sir, you have answered the next question partially, but if you could finally tell us, what makes parachute regiment so special that we all of us keep talking about? If you could consult and tell us what makes them so special.
What makes them so special? They're special. That's all. They're special. They're meant to be special. Like I said, they are volunteers. One, they're probated and selected, which is the second one. And third is their missions and tasks are the most critical. They get critical missions. They're the most critical. And they contribute at the strategic operation level. They contribute at the tactical level. And it's not a large arm. It's just about very, very small and very elite. And we have the trust of the armed forces leadership, and we have never let them down till now. Whatever it was, if you look at 1947-48, 50 Para Brigade in Chandigarh under Brigadier Mohammad Usman, 65 was Hazi Pir under General Dayal, captured Hazi Pir. There are others also. I'm not saying that. I'm not other people. My regiment will kill me because each one of them, whether Shalatang or Punch or there are many of them. And then 71 Tangel, 2 Para dropped a day with Tangel, and Tangel they were the first to enter Dhaka. And so you always get the most critical task, whether it is the commando raid in Mandol by 9 Para or Chachro by that time Bhavani Singh, or it was the operations in Sikkim, or the operations in Maldives or Sri Lanka, Kargil, all the battalions involved in Kargil operations, or even thereafter in CT, counter-terrorism operations with the amount of Ashoka Chakra we have. But we have also paid a heavy cost. Let me also say that a heavy cost, it pains, the cost pains. Because of our tasks, we paid a heavy cost, especially in terms of our leaders have paid a very heavy cost. But then that's special. There's nothing special about it. We're plain simple soldiers, basically. We get the toughest tasks to do, and we do them well, I suppose.
Got it. So my final question to you would be: a lot of aspirants will be watching this, even now and even on the YouTube. So what will be your message to all those defense aspirants who have joined the forces, be it Army, Air Force, or Navy?
Join the forces, enjoy life. You are special. You will enjoy it. At the end of the day, you will enjoy it. While doing things will be tough, there'll be good days, there'll be bad days, but that's in the office. But something you will be doing at the age of, let's say, 21, 22, 23, you sitting on a post along the line of actual control or line of control, you're leading men, and you say, okay, what's the day today? Saturday? No, today is Sunday. So today is Sunday. Nowhere else you can do that. You are the leader, you're the boss. So, and leading from the front, when the love and affection which your men give you, they give you body protection, by the way. It is touching. When you're in operations, they say, "Saab, niche ho ja, marna hai kya?" So then, and when you don't do it, and they give you body protection, come in front of you. I've seen it a number of times. So that sort of a thing, no one else will, no other life, no other career will do that. You may earn a lot, but Fauj also is not bad. So Fauj is very good rather, and but you are special. And you enjoy life. Life is worth enjoying because you do such tough things, and the sense of achievement, sense of accomplishment, and the sense of affiliation. If you ask anyone, he said, "My regiment is the best, my arm is the best, my service is the best," and why not? You believe that you're the best. It's a self-belief that matters. Whereas outside, well, things are good, things are bad, and everywhere things are good, things are bad. There are good days in office, bad days in office, but you are different, and you are looked on. You are respected by everyone. It's the respect that matters. The family, friends, even people are unknown, so they respect you. And the fact is, it's a clean, neat life, no complications. It's a simple life, a very simple life. There's no complications. There's a lot of hard work. There's no cakewalk. There's no easy things in life. It's a lot of hard work to do, but at the end of the day, if a man says something, your colleague says something, or anyone you don't even know says something, it'll be done. If he says yes, it is yes. If he says no, it is no. So there's no roundabout things. It is total trust, total beliefs. It's a good life. Good life. I would say aspirants, if you aspire, come join, enjoy life. At the end of the day, if you repent, you can curse me.
Mhm. Got it, sir. So thanks a lot for your time, sir, on this session. I hope a lot of people who have watched us and will be watching us on the channel will learn a lot from you and you'll get motivated as well. So thanks again, sir, for being on this session, sir. Jai Hind.
Thank you very much and wish you the very best. Wish all of you happiness and success always. Thank you very much and Jai Hind.
Jai Hind, sir. Bye bye.